Howdy, y'all. I'm Elizabeth Gore. Welcome to The Big Idea from Yahoo Finance, the show that navigates the world of small business and entrepreneurship. All businesses start with one light bulb moment, and I'm going to take you on a journey with America's entrepreneurs. As the co-founder of the small business funding platform, Hello Alice, it has always been my mission to ensure entrepreneurs have the tools they need to live the American dream. We're going to get between the spreadsheets with these operators to flow from their smallest failures to their biggest successes. So let's cowboy up. Today's big idea question is, how do you leverage your personal brand for a product? What this means is, how do you use your own name to elevate your business? Our industry's focus will be fashion. I love fashion, whether it's boots or stilettos. So here we go. Joining me today is Miss Fashion herself, Rebecca Minkoff. Rebecca is a multi-hyphenate. Not only is she a fashion designer, but also an author, influencer, podcast host, and a former Real Housewife of New York. She is also the co-founder of the Female Founder Collective, a great partner of Hello Alice that is a network of female-led businesses that works to enable and empower each other. So let's get to talking to Rebecca. I can't believe you're here.
I'm here.
Do you like my dress?
I love your dress.
I mean, I'm
bringing it back.
I was like, I have to wear a classic Rebecca Minkoff. I have to.
You did it.
So 20 years in this business.
Yes.
What does it feel like?
You know what?
Right.
It feels like 100 lifetimes. It just feels like the amount of people I've been and the amount of stages of the business that I've seen. Mm-hmm. It's wild.
And the big idea question of the day is, when do you use your own name to create your brand? And I want to back up 20 years ago when, you didn't name this, Sally's.
Right.
Like, why did you choose your name?
I chose my name. So I worked for a designer for 3 years before I went out on my own, thinking I knew everything. And I said, if I'm going to work this hard, it's going to be my name because I want everyone to know who I am. And I also felt like as an aspiring designer, I connected with designers that were their own names. I read the biography of Chanel. I connected with her story and how scrappy she had to be at a time when women had like no rights at all. And other incredible women, Donna Karan, Alexander McQueen. He's not a woman, but still like these people that you're like, I don't just like your clothing or your bags, but I like who you are. And so to me, that was kind of, the starting gate for my own name.
So what are some pros and cons in tying your personal identity to the business?
There was this saying throughout the company for a long time, like if I wasn't in the room and a decision would be made, well, will Rebecca wear it? Will she like it?
What would Rebecca do?
Yes, exactly. And that can also be hard to act as a business because you do have to understand how to take something, again, the 80-20 rule and commercialize it.
Right.
And so it can't always be what Rebecca would want. And so we had to sort of get that mentality out of the company, like what is great for the business, what looks like the brand, which is Rebecca, but as I said before, it's the expansion of that.
And has there ever been a time where you're like, oh, I wish that wasn't my name?
There's never been a time that I wish it wasn't my name. There have been times where my name has been on product that I didn't agree with.
Ooh, tell me more about how's that happen? Because I know you. You are in control. You know your products. I mean, you're an incredible CEO. So how does that happen?
So it happens when you are at a critical point of business, and there was a time where many of our wholesale partners were coming in and almost playing designer. And if you said no, they just didn't buy. And so you sort of look down the path and you're like, do I give them what they want and be in the store and sell and have a high volume business? And by that time you're very big. So you're like, if I say no and we shrink, that means loss of business, loss of people.
Right.
And so for a while we said yes, and it didn't help us. That's the hindsight, is it didn't help us. To have a laptop bag that said nerd alert on it did not help us. Okay.
That's funny.
Then COVID happens and everything goes away and you're forced to reevaluate. Well, what do we want and stand for? And that, in many ways, having that exercise was the best thing that could have happened to us.
I remember once you and I had a conversation that you had to have a really tough discussion on pricing. I think it was after the market crash here or something with some of your big stores, and you had to walk. Do I remember that right?
Well, we had to lower our prices or they were going to walk.
Okay,
and we did lower our prices. Yeah. And thank God we did. That's a time where it was good that we listened.
Okay.
Because every single one of my competitors evaporated.
Interesting.
The same woman who was making X amount of dollars was either not making that anymore or her 401k was gone. And so her ability to be nimble and pay $500 for a bag evaporated. And so thank God we did that because, that is our pricing structure today is affordable luxury.
I'm pulling out, you always talk about her and she and what, your customer wants. And when I originally met you, it was because you were doing so much work for and with other female founders. Tell us about that journey.
So it was 2018. I was quite lonely as a female founder. I had my brother, my co-founder at Rebecca Minkoff. But again, he had a very certain way of how he liked to share information with others. And I was like, someone, please, is this as hard? Is this hard for everybody? Is this?
Right.
And I just needed other women. And within the fashion industry, it was also incredibly lonely because no one wants to share the bad stuff with each other because it's so competitive. So I began to peer outside of my industry. I met you. I met other like-minded women. And the power of that unlocked something like, you know what? We can all help each other. This isn't a competition. And if we surround ourselves with community, with education, then hopefully this makes a difference in the future success of other businesses. And
right.
I brought on Allison White as my co-founder a couple months later. So together with our amazing team, we really built an amazing membership community, but an education-based, all the unsexy parts of business. You want to know what your CRM platform should be or how to raise capital or what to do with it once you have it. We're here to teach you.
And how do folks find that?
FemaleFounderCollective.com.
Right. And I want to go back to your name again, because I think a lot of small business owners, whether they have a storefront, whether they have, a consulting service, is it, putting your full self out there. So of all those people you've been, which one do you feel the most sorry for and which one are you the most proud of?
Wow, that's a good question. I feel the most sorry for the me. 2000 and let's just say 2011.
Okay.
We thought that the way to grow and the trend was grow at all costs. Margin doesn't matter.
Okay.
And I wish I would have dug my feet into the ground and said, margin matters. We're building a profitable company.
Right.
And again, when everything seems to be going in an industry a certain direction, you think you have to jump on that bandwagon.
Right.
Taking money from investors doesn't cure your problems.
Man, tell me. Right?
So, yeah.
In fact, sometimes it can create more, right?
Yeah.
And really quickly, the grow at all costs thing. I mean, Silicon Valley for a while had this blitz scale and do this and throw money at everything. And small business owners, that is a very dangerous proposition, right?
It's incredibly dangerous, and it makes every small business owner think, I have to raise money to be successful.
Right.
And we've stripped Americans of the idea that they can have a beautiful, small, which means under 25 million, profitable business that provides a lifestyle for myself and my family and my colleagues.
And
like, there's nothing wrong with that.
Have a great, have fun, right? Like not have the, now let's go back to the one that you liked the most or had the most fun.
I'm liking the me now.
Ooh, yes. I love that.
I hate the your 40s are your best, but the last 2 years have been phenomenal.
Well, you know what? And you have 4 beautiful kids. You've got a podcast going. You have a book going. I love what you do for other female founders. So you said you've been multiple people over 20 years. Yes. So if your brand is your identity and you are changing and evolving, how does the brand follow along?
Well, I think it needs to, if you want to stay happy with it. For a while, when I first had kids, we had an unfortunate hire who said, we don't want to talk about your family or your kids. So let's just freeze the customer at 26. Bless. She apologized to me later. Okay. Yes. A little too late for that. Yeah. But, we froze the customer at 26. Then I could no longer identify because I was having very different experiences. And my core customer was also becoming a mom.
Fascinating.
And we weren't talking to her anymore. We were talking about going to the club.
Right.
And so you have that disconnect. So I think if you can imbue as you're evolving what you love and say into your brand, most likely your core customer that loves you is in that journey with you and usually is experiencing the same things.
You're not going to the club anymore.
I'm not going to the club anymore, no.
Rebecca, is being authentic profitable?
You don't have to be showing every part of your life to be authentic.
So good.
But you have to be authentic about what you do show.
Okay.
For instance, if you see me changing diapers, having a messy kitchen, my kids wrecking the house a minute it's clean, does that make you want to buy a bag? Probably not.
Yeah.
It makes you laugh.
Right.
It makes you feel like, oh, she's so fun.
Right.
But if I'm in the business of trying to sell you accessible luxury, that's what I want to show you and have you connect with me on many different levels. And that's what I have to be authentic about. So being here with you, being authentic, or showcasing how to style something and being authentic, that's where you want to show up and be real.
I think that is some of the most brilliant advice I've ever heard, particularly for this next generation. You don't have to show everything in your life, but what you do show, be authentic.
100%.
All right, hold that thought. We will be right back on The Big Idea. Welcome back to The Big Idea. I'm Elizabeth Gore here with the amazing Rebecca Minkoff. So now you've got a book, Fearless. You've got this incredible podcast. So tell me about both of those. And again, that's just putting yourself out there even more. Like, tell me your thought process on both of those.
My thought process is, if we imagine Rebecca Minkoff as the hub, then you have all the spokes that are like our brand pillars. So it's obviously women, supporting them through lots of different ways. So if you're a founder, it's Female Founder Collective. If you want to have more fearless life, it's reading the book and applying the rules. And then the podcast is for those that need their weekly dose of, like, I interview someone like you and they're like, oh my gosh, she had a tough time. This is what she applied in her life, and this is the problem she's solving for me.
I'm enjoying doing this podcast because I'm learning so much in the chair.
Yeah.
I'm just curious, a couple of things that you've heard that you want to pass on that you were just mind blown when you were doing your podcast.
Yes. I think the two that I'll say is, I believe that I was interviewing Patty from Fortune, Patty Sellers.
Patty Sellers, OG.
And she said, if women talked about money the way they talk about sex and children, how much more money would we all have, and would the gender gap be as large? And you notice it everywhere you go. You're the first to pull out the pictures of your kids, or talk about good or bad in your sex life. Did you ever be like, how much money are you making? What'd you do to diversify your stocks? Did you get crypto? Like, we need to be having those conversations, because it's happening on the golf course for the men and in the boardrooms, and it's not happening enough for women. So I loved her advice for that. And then the second piece, and I feel like I say it all the time, but hopefully your listeners have not heard me say it yet, is Kristen Olszewski from Nomatica Wines said, never take advice from a person whose life you don't want.
Ooh, I love that, because when you're starting a business, boy, are you going to get a lot of advice. You're going to get great advice, bad advice, neutral advice. And I think what I like that lens, like, is this the person you really want to listen to?
Yeah.
And you're going to have to distill it either way, right?
Yeah. And you can A/B test advice. It doesn't mean that, like, you try it if you think, and approach it like an engineer. There's not a single engineer that I've ever met that gets emotional about A/B testing. Like, I'm a failure, A didn't work. They're like, A didn't work, go to B. What if you approached your business and failure that way? And it's not the end. It's just, that didn't work, so what's B?
Plan Z even, right?
Yeah.
Speaking of Plan Z, we talk about dirty unicorns, right, on this show. Some pretty massive mistakes that you've learned from and can pass knowledge on. Can you drop a few of those to us?
Yeah, I think you'll be surprised at how much money you think you need to be successful in terms of scale. And actually, if you invest in the right things, I think when we took in an investment in 2012, that money was gone in 3 stores and an upgraded website. An upgraded website and some new product categories.
Okay.
We could have had 1 store with a fifth of the footprint.
Wow.
That was actually the proper size that we needed, because we discovered it later through a pop-up. We could have not blown up the company to 115 people. And we could have just focused on going back to our community, which we're very enmeshed in today, but just being with your community, learning, surveying, and having them come along for the ride.
And when in that moment, because you're like getting really granular, where you're like, oh crap.
Oh crap was, I knew what we were spending on the New York City store.
Right.
I have a friend down the street who opened her store and spent 1/10 of what we spent.
Oh, geez.
And profitable almost right away. And I was like, wow, we thought we had to have the Madison Avenue or Fifth Avenue, like big branded fancy store with custom everything. Actually, turns out she got all her furniture at different auctions and flea markets and spray painted it all black, and it looked just as great.
Keep going back to this, don't grow at all costs. I mean, I think this is the thematic of our day here. I mean, that's just, it's so interesting when you learn it the right way, learn it the wrong way. If I'm in fashion, which is our industry today, and I want to get started, and I just look around and I think, oh my gosh, it's Rebecca Minkoff. How could I ever get to that level? I mean, what is your advice on that person who's drawing and designing and sewing their own clothes and ready to go to market right now?
I think that you have social media on and not on your side. There is no traditional route. Start documenting what you're doing. Bring people along for the ride. Focus on one thing,
One thing.
One thing. What is your t-shirt and is it the best? And what sets you apart? And how are you getting people emotionally connected to what you stand for and who you are? And you might not be good at being on camera right away.
Right.
But that's where it is. Video's here to stay. And people want to say, I'm wearing this brand because I identify with X, Y, and Z
and
about it.
And that goes back to you, your name, your story. Now, you said there's good and bad with social media. What's the other side of it?
The bad is that there's a million other people doing what you're doing. So how are you going to stand out? And how are you going to get attention?
How are you going to break through?
And the traditional forms are eroding. The press that we get today doesn't have the same metrics for sales as it did, back in the day. If my jacket was on the cover of a magazine, 10,000 units. Today, cover of a magazine, a couple hundred units. So it's like you have to begin to sort of be creative in how you're showing up, and it has to unfortunately be everywhere, which for a lot of founders can be overwhelming.
So that's interesting. So what maybe in the last couple of years, what was something you did that did sell 10,000 units? I'm just curious.
Well, we didn't have 10,000 units, but we did a collaboration with Wicked for the launch of the movie.
Amazing.
And so we did two bags. We kept it really tight. We didn't go crazy. And I was like, this better sell out, and it sold out, which was like a nice feeling to have. Yeah.
How cool.
Yeah.
And where did that come from? How did that idea manifest?
It manifested because I had just had my last baby. I was 10 days out. I get this urgent call. It's NBC, Wicked. We get on a Zoom. They're like, we'd like to invite you to come to London in a couple of days. You're going to get the whole experience. We want you to be our collaboration partner. And crazy hormone cocktail me was like, I could do this. I could leave. I'll take the baby. And I was like, wait, I can't even get him a passport. And then I was like, I can't do this. And I just looked at him and I said, I'm not leaving him and I can't take him. So I'm going to say no to the opportunity, even though this is a huge deal. Wow. And I called him and I said, I just had a baby. Like, I can't leave him. And I can't bring him. So thank you so much. And they said, well, who's your second? Have her come.
Okay.
And so we sent Mary, and she had an incredible experience. And she was actually the right one to go because she made all the connections. And then we negotiated for a long time on what the deal, and information and how that works would look like. And then product design, we got access to the art. We got to touch and feel the props. It was an incredible experience.
Thank you. That's amazing. But I do want to pick up on something as mothers. So in those moments, doing the right thing for you, your baby, your child, I think a lot of folks would be like, well, how can you run an effective business? And you chose the right thing. It came back around to you and then still was effective. When I had the great opportunity to work for Michael Dell at Dell Technologies, I was very, very pregnant with my son. And same thing. I said, I don't know if you know, but I'm pregnant and there's no way I can take on a job at this capacity. And they came back around and was like, take your full maternity leave. We'll be here when you're done, but we'd like to know that you're coming. And it was, so I lift these two stories up for a second because I want women to know you can make the right choice for your child and still run a really effective company.
You can. And there will be sometimes opportunities that do go away, but it's okay. You don't have to take every opportunity. And I say this in hindsight because I thought I did. With the first 3 children, I took every opportunity just in case it goes away.
Right.
And then you miss out on these moments, luckily enough that I had a 4th that I could be like, oh, I missed that. I missed that. I missed that. I missed that. I'm not missing anything else. And so now I'm just like, you know what? If it's too much time away or, it takes my attention too much off of something, like I just have to walk away.
Yeah. I love the Wicked collaboration. I do think with all the noise, partnerships are such an effective way to break through.
They are.
Because your funnel, if we all talk about marketing funnel, and if you're talking to the same people over and over, and suddenly you have, you partner up with someone, you have this whole other set of eyeballs.
Yeah.
It's quite powerful.
It's quite powerful. And when you look at the overlap of you have the Rebecca Minkoff legacy fans, you have the Wicked fans. If you can make that magic happen, then it's golden.
That is brilliant. I want to pick up on the best advice that you've had in the early days. We'll go back to been at this 20 years, that you you just now realize it was the best advice. Maybe in the moment you couldn't, saturate it.
Yeah.
Because I think we look back on things and be like, holy crap, that was good. That was good. And I get it now.
Yeah.
Do you have any of those?
Oh, I have a lot. I was so committed to my craft and my art and like just blind vision. I was never good at figuring out and commercializing it. And my colleague of mine was like, Rebecca Minkoff, if you look at it like a pyramid, let's just say I'm at the top. And as long as everything, when it's diluted, still looks and feels like you, but it's made for people maybe that live in more rural communities, that having a stud on their flip-flop is their edge. It's okay. You can let go. It doesn't have to be fully studded flip-flop or a fully studded bag or the aggressive leather jacket that I want everyone to want.
Right.
And so as soon as I could sort of wrap my head around that, you grow a business, you commercialize it, it pays the bills. Up until that point, because I was so committed to like, it has to be the most aggressive form of every design I do.
Right.
That's a very tiny niche business. If you can afford to do that, great.
Yeah.
If you can afford to just have those customers, awesome. There are a lot of successful brands that have done that. And so I just wish I would have embraced that a lot sooner.
Right. Well, I got to tell you, your book is aptly named Fearless. I hope everyone reads it. I actually know I will walk out less fearful thanks to you. And thank you for being on the show. You are
thank you
such a vision.
Good
You're a
full
great
circle
mom,
moment.
Great business owner, and a great human being. Thank you. At the end of each episode, I like to give a shout out to a small business who is doing great work. Today, I'd like to shout out Girly Garage. So cool. Founded by trained mechanic Talina Hanley in San Diego, California. Girly Garage teaches and empowers women in automotive education, consulting, and repairs. So go get your car fixed or check them out at girlygarage.com. Thank you, Rebecca, for coming on the show today, and thank all of you for joining us. We hope you've learned a lot. This has been The Big Idea from Yahoo Finance. Please make sure to scan the QR code below to follow Yahoo Finance podcasts, or check us out at The Big Idea wherever you get your podcasts. And if you follow on Amazon Music, just ask Alexa, play The Big Idea. You can also come say howdy to me on any of my social channels at Elizabeth Gore USA. I'm Elizabeth Gore, and as my grandmother always said, hold your head up high and give 'em hell. See you next time.
This content was not intended to be financial advice and should not be used as a substitute for professional financial services.